Thanks to Ranjana, Bharati, Rana, and many others. I'm not taking all names for bringing us here. And I was here last year as well, along with Nalini, and it's great to be back again. So I'll be very brief. I think Kaushik has already given a very broad overview of the kind of things that you might expect. You're, I'm audible to everyone, right? You can hear me at the end? Yeah, I think they can all hear. They can hear. Yeah, thank you. So, the first thing that came to my mind when I sort of came into this room is I wanted to check with you. How many of you are so keen about economics that you may wish to pursue it as a career, possibly in business and banking and teaching, etc.? Is it a very large? Okay, that's very good to see. So you're all very keen about the subject economics. There are enormous possibilities in academics, in teaching, research, in the government and banking, commerce, and so forth. So justifiably, your interest is well placed and you will all get jobs, etc. But you know, at the time that I was in school, like you, economics was not a subject that was offered for study. If I remember right, it was not offered in any of the sort of at the school level sort of studies in India or even in Europe. It has come about much later. And one might want to know why that was the case. I mean, in school, after doing the usual subjects, English and your MIL, Bengali or Hindi or whatever, history, geography, if you were science-minded, you did physics, chemistry, biology, etc. But economics was not there. And it was not there possibly because I think as I myself sort of thought about it, it's probably a subject that begins to emerge in your own minds after you gain a certain degree of maturity. Whereas some of the other subjects that I just mentioned, mathematics and so forth, these come naturally out of the curiosity of a young and growing mind. So, the first thing is the subject is an unusual kind of subject. It's often thought to be the mother of the social sciences, and it's a subject that links with philosophy, moral philosophy as well, ethics. In fact, economics has been for a long period part of the moral science tripos in many of the Western universities, Cambridge in particular. So, what is it about economics that makes it a fascinating kind of subject? Now, the thing is, economics is about the day-to-day activities of human beings in their day-to-day activities as agriculturists or workers in industry, or producers who are manufacturing goods, and of course consumers, people who are consuming goods, the housewife purchasing goods to, run a family. Economics talks about all of this. Now, all of these things tend to come into the mind of a person who has come about to a certain degree of maturity in life. And that's why possibly economics becomes interesting as we go along. Now, it also so happens that this is a subject that has a certain degree of rootedness in some core, shall we say, principles, which can also be studied in a mathematical sort of context. the notion of maximization, maximizing a certain particular objective, and the idea of maximizing something subject to certain constraints. This is inherent in economics, and it's inherent in engineering and certain other subjects. Now, in fact, a great name in economics of the 20th century was Paul Samuelson. Many of you might have come across this name. Samuelson was the second. The Nobel Prize in Economics was instituted in the year 1969, if I recall right. And the first recipients of the Nobel Prize in Economics were two people, Tinbergen and Frisch, Europeans. And the second year this prize was given, the recipient was Paul Samuelson. He was possibly the greatest economist the world saw after two or three other names, maybe John Maynard Keynes and Schumpeter. So, and Samuelson comes generationally after these two names. And in the latter half of the 20th century, he was a big name. In his Nobel acceptance speech, this is what Samuelson talks about economics as being a subject that is about looking at certain maximizing principles, either maximizing or minimizing principles. If you're a producer, you want to minimize costs, okay? And the idea of maximizing utility or satisfaction or happiness for consumers and the idea of minimizing costs for a producer, these are notions that can be subject to certain formal reasonings, mathematical reasonings in particular. So this is a subject that talks about this kind of mathematical principles, but it also has the idea of meeting human needs. It is also a subject that talks about the idea of distributive justice. Economics is a subject that talks about some people being very rich, some others being very poor. And the lack of ethical justification for a world in which some people are very rich and some are very poor. I mean, if we look at the Indian society, the richest 1% in India take account of almost 25% of the GDP, gross domestic product. That's a huge amount of money. And this makes India one of the most distributionally wrong kind of countries to have, very high and very skewed distribution of income. There are many other countries which share this. Mexico is one example. South Africa is one example. Mexico to some extent, but South Africa. And India also. Now, economics is a subject that deals with this particular issue, in addition to inflation and unemployment that Kaushik talked about. Economics also talks about how we come to a situation where the distribution of income becomes highly skewed. Some people are very rich, some are extremely poor. And here I think the best example is our own country. And economics, therefore, is a subject that goes to the heart of how we should be thinking in terms of ordering our society. And is there a way in which we can think in terms of increasing the income levels of the bottom sections of the population? Now, it so happens that in looking at this issue of inequality, economics is just one subject that deals with it. There are other social sciences that also deal with it. Sociology, for example, also deals with this. There is a caste hierarchy, and for a variety of reasons, some castes have been at the top end and some castes have been at the bottom end, so low that we have had untouchability as part of our terrible long history. And it continues to exist in certain parts of the country. Now, income inequality is an economic phenomenon, of course, but it is also a sociological phenomenon. It is also a historical phenomenon. So, when we look at the subject economics, it looks at, on the one hand, certain broad mathematical principles, but it comes to the notion of morality and ethics, and it also looks at history and sociology. That's what makes economics the kind of subject it is. And of course, it is a subject that deals with very practical kind of issues, the practical issues of banking, money supply, money creation, how much money people have in their pockets, and so forth. That is what the subject economics is all about. And the greatest practitioners of the subject economics were people who looked at the subject in a broad, holistic kind of perspective. And that is what gives the subject the strength and the uniqueness that economics is all about. So I thought I'll just give a brief statement, and then of course we'll look at questions and so forth from all of you, and we'll take it on forward.